The following presentation is a summation of the Indivisible guide called Indivisible States, Empowering the States to Resist the Trump Agenda. This presentation provides only a broad brush approach, so I recommend everyone read the guide, which can be found at https://indivisible.org/resource/indivisible-states-defining-strategy-your state. Even if you've not heard of the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC, before, you are most certainly familiar with their work. For the last 40 years, ALEC has successfully worked to influence politicians to promote their conservative agenda by suppressing voter rights, controlling redistricting, limiting a woman's access to reproductive care, and getting conservative judges appointed to the bench. Now, Indivisible is copying their success from the ALEC playbook. So for the next 2 years, Indivisible is asking us to focus our work on state and local legislatures so that we can promote progressive agendas and progressive values, which include a clean environment, economic justice, health care for all, racial equity, a true representative democracy, gender and sexual equity, and civil rights. Our formula is not only a great defense, but also a good and sound offense. So to counteract the Trump's agenda's harmful policies, we're going to be focusing on our local and state lawmakers. These bodies of government are able to act more quickly than the federal government and will be a vehicle for positive progressive change. During the last 2 years, states found a way to proactively restore protections that the Trump administration tried to take away. We should use the successes of other progressive groups and states because they have powerful stories that we can leverage to explain how progressive laws can work in our state as well. And we're already seeing the results by addressing a rigged system. Proposition 2 to end gerrymandering and Proposition 3, which codifies a voter's rights in the state of Michigan Constitution, are two positive signs that our efforts are working. And we can also have an impact because we're more easily noticed. A typical House of Representatives member like Jack Bergman has 700,000 constituents, whereas a typical state legislator only has, on average, 3,291. So getting phone calls to a state lawmaker can have more impact. As I mentioned earlier, a state legislature has the power to restore protections undone by Trump through state laws. It's hard work, and it's not a slam dunk because these laws have to go through a process which include getting introduced, being debated, voted on, and then signed into law by a governor, but it can be done. Gubernatorial executive orders are another tool to neutralize the Trump agenda. For example, the FCC repealed net neutrality, but that's been successfully counteracted by state governors who signed executive orders that would prevent their governments from doing business with any ISP provider that was not net neutral. Attorney General lawsuits we've seen are often the first line of defense. The California Attorney General sued the Trump administration 24 times in 2017, and the New York Attorney General has also been very influential and very public in bringing lawsuits against the administration. Ballot initiatives, we are already seeing their successes. So for the next 2 years, Michigan will be a true purple state with a Democratic administration and a Republican House and Senate. So our mission will also include encouraging our governor, attorney general, and secretary of state to use their powers to support our progressive agenda. Conversely, we must positively leverage our point of view to pressure Larry Inman and Wayne Schmidt to work with us so we can move forward. So why do Schmidt and Inman want to work with us? So here's something that they may care about. I think they're term limited out, so they may not want to get reelected in 2020. But in case they don't, we can use that. Both want to establish a record of introducing and getting bills passed. It's a way they measure their successes. We'll also need to influence them not to support bad legislation and not to vote the party line. For example, if we want better internet service coverage across the district, this is something that we can work on together. Let's make sure we get a seat at the table. They're not used to and perhaps not even comfortable with getting feedback from constituents. They count on voter apathy to get their agendas passed. Our constant and sustained activism is an enormous opportunity for us to have an impact. We know state legislators are often influenced by money and lobbyists. We can work together with other like-minded groups to use the lobby card and lobby these guys. And while we're at it, we need to get legislation to get money out of politics. And finally, as I mentioned before, term limits. They're a damning institution that we have here, but we have to live with them, so let's try to use them to our advantage. Term limits, as it turns out, are pipelines to higher offices. Larry Inman may aspire to replace Wayne Schmidt someday. So let's keep that in mind as we move forward. So I know this looks like a boring slide, but believe it or not, it's not the most boring slide in the deck, so hang with me for a second. Bills are often written by outside groups and lobbyists, and what we need to do is make sure our interests are represented when they're being proposed and written. To do that, we'll need to look at the Michigan committee process and get involved. If we show up in Lansing, if we find out who the biggest lobbyist players are and engage them, if we provide public testimony and/or written statements, we can have an impact. Legislative leadership can be helpful to us too. We can use them to make sure our agenda is on the table. It might even be effective to CC them on any emails that we send. That way they can go to Wayne Schmidt or to Larry Inman and say, "But we've seen what your constituents are saying." We should use these contacts liberally and hold them accountable as well. As soon as they become available, we need to find out committee assignments for both the Senate and the House. Who's on the committees for the things that we care about? Make sure you sign up on Schmidt and Inman's websites and social media pages so you can get instant updates. Find out where they're appearing in their newsletters. Understand where they stand on issues. Look at their voting history. Who are their biggest contributors? In other words, just doing the research. You can set up a Google News alert too to get an email whenever they make the news and give them feedback. Make sure they know you are watching. Be that creepy stalker. Who are the local reporters who have written about our legislators? Reach out to them and explain why we're holding a rally, lobbying in Lansing, or elsewhere, and give them background materials and quotes. Know when the lawmakers are meeting and where they're meeting, and make a plan to show up. If public comment is allowed, make it. Here are the 2019 House, Senate, and Grand Traverse Board of Commissioners calendars. We already know about organizing locally because, well, we belong to Indivisible Traverse City. As many here have already done, it's time we all increase our effectiveness by reaching out to groups with similar interests to amplify everyone's voice. Helping them helps us. This is transformational as well as transactional. So don't just parachute in. Take time to make the outreach. Invest in understanding their mission and finding the intersections where we agree. We don't have the luxury of attacking and responding to every stupid thing that Trump throws at us. His strategy has not only been one of distractions, but also one of divide and conquer. Therefore, we must prioritize our goals. Work on getting legislation passed that we support and stopping those laws that we don't. We need to think about developing SMART goals, or at least thinking about these goals when something comes up. So what are SMART goals? SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Part of this is understanding how to get a bill passed. Meet the author of the bill or other co-sponsors. Understand why a bill is stalled or hasn't passed previously. Identify who is working against us, not just them in quotation marks. Who are those specific people and work around them? Leverage allies. Leverage everyone. Here's a good quote I liked from the Indivisible Guide. Turning a neutral target into a weak ally can shift the broader needle in the fight. And we need to take advantage of our partner allies and use their influence to support our agenda. Here's some resources where we can track state legislation. My favorite is the legislature.mi.gov. Effort equals results. The more commitment we have, the greater chance we're going to achieve our desired goals. We need to see if we can get involved in the committee process, either in Lansing or here, by finding allies and using them as a way to get our opinions a place at the table. Submit letters to them, call them, email them, give public testimony, write letters to the editor, and send the lawmakers copies when they're published. Visit their offices. There's nothing to say that groups of us can't pull off a day in Lansing. I'm sure that Wayne Schmidt or Larry Inman and their staffs would love a visit from us. And I've actually heard that nothing rattles Wayne Schmidt more than having constituents show up at his door. Attend their town halls and constituent coffees. And of course, we're going to continue what we're doing by sending out emails and posting on Facebook and asking you to make calls, write letters, and why. Publicity. This is something we're already good at because we've had, sadly, too much practice in the last 2 years. But the players do change, so keeping reporters and newspaper people in the loop can only help our cause. Let's all work on establishing friendly relations. Understand their need to make a good story. Craft the story for them. Heck, write the story for them. And as we know better than most, the pen is mightier than the sword. But remember, we need to be persuasive in our approach. Here's a list of newspapers in the Congressional 1st District, how to contact them, how many words a letter to the editor can be. You can use this for parsing out newspapers specifically for the 105th as well. And whether you have 2 minutes, 2 hours, or 2 days a week, you can make a difference. And during the next 2 years, remember, this is still a marathon and not a sprint. But we can win the future. And let's not forget to make it fun too. Thank you.